Welcome to The Week Ahead, a podcast by SBM Intelligence. I'm your host, Veronica Pana Igube. Every Friday, we explore stories that are shaping our African continent. Reports of an alleged coup plot against President Bola Tinubu has caused public outrage. The defense headquarters denies these claims, saying there was no coup plan or related address. Is there a danger of a coup? What do such stories mean for the Nigerian economy? Kano, Katsina, and Jigawa plan to raise 50 billion naira as a form of a joint electricity market to boost power supply. How will this collaboration improve electricity access in the region? An Ivorian court has sentenced 32 protesters to 3 years imprisonment as part of a pre-election crackdown following violent unrest and key candidates' exclusion ahead of tomorrow's election. How is the government balancing election security with the right to peaceful assembly? Will this affect the outcome of the election? Joining us today for further insight on the podcast is Samuel Atiku. Welcome, Samuel, to the podcast.
Thank you for having me on the podcast. Yes.
It's always a pleasure. Let's start with our first story. If you look at a lot of African countries, we're seeing the military take over and they're having like a military coup. But now it has come to Nigeria where we're hearing that there's an alleged coup plot, even if the defense headquarters has denied it. What do you think is a danger of a coup, especially in Nigeria, who we have enjoyed some level of democracy since 1999?
I think I'll say it's a tough questions to answer. Trust around information coming out of government are diminished significantly, and everything you have to filter yourself and make sense of it. But if we look back in history, and then we look at situations and then I'll call it things that happen before coup d'etat happens, or things that happen that prevent coup d'etats from happening, I think that may point us in the right direction and gauge us towards the direction. But just to be clear, we know that Nigeria and our part dependency over the years has been that when there are tough things in the country, when the economy face some economic challenges, you begin to hear stories around coups, covert seizures, and all those kind of things. And it has happened in the past. If you remember, pre 1999, um, we've had incidents of that. Now, having said that, with the presidency to prevent such things from happening,
Sorry, please can you repeat that again? Because I didn't get you at some point. You went off.
West African economic, that ECOWAS, are clamping down on you for taking those coups. But when it comes to Nigeria, it's a little bit very complex. And then the global world itself, when you look at countries like the US, the UK, when you look at the dynamism going on in those big countries now, people tend not to be, in fact, things that normative issues that you would never hear happen, for instance, in the US are now happening. Even the president of the US openly supporting dictatorship and all those things. So it has made uh, I'll call it all those norms that prevent coups from happening a little bit watered down. But that said, let's go to the substance of the whole conversation. The factors that we see in Nigeria today that could support the possibility of coups happening is one, the fragmentation of the elite, and then the legitimate shock around it. So essentially, you begin to see visibly splits between the ruling coalitions in the country. Are we seeing that? ADC, APC? Are we seeing something? Or are we seeing consolidation? I think that's the first big question. And the second question is the persistence of this post-election legitimacy disputes, right? Mass protests. Is that happening? I don't think so. Are you seeing that massive mass movement of people around that can justify coup d'etat? Economic distress is another thing that have triggered coup d'etats in the past in the country. Rapid inflation. We know there are subsidy problem. People are struggling. Yes, I think that's still very material in Nigeria today. Then you begin to see things like security overreach, and then there's a moral problem within the military. Some people are not getting paid, some people are getting more money, and then that leads to conflict, right? Are we seeing that in the military? I don't think so, right? Then you see the fact that promotion within the military, for instance, you begin to hear things like disproportionate promotion, some politicizing of the promotion systems. Some people are getting promoted. This their regional bias, their ethnic bias. Is that within the military? I think is something that we need to look at. Is that happening? And so those are I can go on and on and on, but those are factors that had played in the past and that led to coup d'etats. The big question is that can it happen in Nigeria today? Um, i- and then with the society that we have support such, I think those are questions I cannot answer to be sincere. We can only look at the trend of things. But if the military is saying there's no coup d'etat among us, now where is the information around coup d'etat emanating from and why? So those are big questions we need to answer as a country. My own big takeaway here is that the country does not need any coup d'etat. The problem that we're facing in Nigeria is man-made, and the primary copist that actually led us this pathway that we still find ourselves today at the military when they destructed our very nascent democracy in the 60s. We're happy that people that are now below the age of 25, they don't know what it means to live under military rule. I, as a person, I took in tear gas in my nose when I was just a child, and I know how brutal the military can be, how corrupt they can be, and how excessive they can be. And what they did and how they destroyed the fabric of the country is still, I mean, it's still moving around. If you look closely at Nigeria, the way the military talk to people, if you go to our secondary schools, our primary schools, interaction between teachers and children, everything is still, even within the church, the mosque system, that culture of authoritarianism is still in the country, even after 25 years of democracy. So nobody want to go back and begin to reverse the course of action. So personally, I hope that nobody, because you learn how to shoot guns and kill people, prevent or defend, they teach you how to shoot guns and kill people and throw bombs to protect the country, not to go and steal government, steal people's power mandate and then begin to lord over them. Nobody want coup d'etat in this country, regardless of how tough things may be. Yeah, we will ride. The problem of Nigeria is man-made, and there are man-made solutions to it. We will find those man-made solutions. But that's one of those solutions can never be coup d'etat. So anyone that is planning coup d'etat should be rejected immediately. And it should be made clear to them that anyone that indulge in such should actually be made to face the music of the law. How do you put it now? I think it should be condemned by everybody, regardless of what is going on. Ability for us to choose our leader is something that I don't want anybody, because you have guns and you have access to guns, come and steal it away from me.
I mean, exactly. So my next question that I had wanted to ask you was like, what's your thought on a coup? Do you think that that's good for Nigeria? I mean, but in your response, you did answer that. And honestly, we're seeing that in some of the countries where we're seeing protesters from young Gen Zs, like you said, they haven't experienced a coup, a military regime, and you can't even tell what happens in a military regime if you haven't experienced it. Most of the times is our parents, and the millennials who experienced it a bit, and I kick against it totally, and I do agree with you. Nigeria, regardless of the situation that we are in now, I mean, democracy, I think, would always rule. We can move on to our second story. I think it's interesting that as states were given the mandate to work on their own electricity and have electricity initiatives to improve the power situation in the country. It's interesting to see Kano, Katsina, and Jigawa kind of take that joint movement to collaborate as states together to be able to make a difference. But what's your take on this? How significant do you think is this 50 billion naira joint electricity initiative for Northern Nigerian development? Do you think it's gonna work? If you think it's good, what will I say advice or recommendations would you also give these states in their collaborations, things that they can work out, like strategies to ensure that this collaboration they are able to maximize it and it's just not a show, but it actually boils down to improving the power sector in these three states.
I think it's something that is long overdue. I think the whole idea of having states is actually to foster collaboration. And that's why people had always say, oh, let's have true federalism, diverge and then divulge, or anyhow you want to pronounce it, pass to the state and give them autonomy to make decisions they want to make. And one of those decisions could actually be collaboration, collaborating with your neighbors to actually make your state better. So, whether we like it or not, Nigeria is still suffering from this chronic energy deficit. And it's reinforcing and happy to say that after so many years, the last time I had conversation about we want to invest in electricity was decades ago. Nobody talks about that. Now people are just saying, let me get that stomach infrastructure and survive. But to go back to that conversation around um, collaborating together to begin to solve problems. That's how to solve problems in society. You collaborate and then you solve your problems. That is it. Now, there's always, if you look closely at the Electricity Act itself, just like you said, it gives states the legitimacy, right? On electricity, especially around, I mean, the federal government had essentially decentralized energy usage. And so you can make decision yourself. Uh, you could make decisions as a state to actually invest or not to invest. But one we expect that the decision you are making is actually to invest in the sector. Now, I will just say the only challenge I have is number one, the financial risk. 50 billion naira is extremely very modest. I don't think it can do anything. And uh, personally, if you look at it, who is making this investment? What is actually the capital needed to actually make this work? What are the guarantees that this will work in terms of financing? If you are just putting 50 billion naira down, how do we show off? Well, because I don't know what 50 billion naira can do now if you try to convert to dollars in terms of what it can lead to, in terms of what you're aiming to achieve. Are you getting guarantees? Are you creditworthy as an entity to take this thing? Are banks willing to actually bankroll this kind of project? Those are big questions that we need to. I mean, it's good to put 50 billion naira down, but there are other issues because 50 billion naira cannot move the needle. So those issues are things that gets me worried. The second thing that is around the technical bottlenecks. Remember, transmission of electricity remains a federally owned entity. I mean, it's controlled by the federal government. And then the interconnections itself requires Abuja's approval. Sorry. Now, what is Abuja going to do? Have you sought the buy-in of Abuja, especially around the transmission, given the fact that you're collaborating across multiple states? Have you saw the agreement of Abuja? Is it part of it? That's something that is still not clear. Now, we also know that some of these governments, they are fragmented and then another person comes in and then he decides to go another way. That political turnover in Nigeria needs to be a constant, right? It's a fragile, I call it continuity is fragile in Nigeria. What measures are you putting on ground to ensure that that doesn't become a risk factor that will prevent this from taking off? So beyond all these things, I think I will just end by saying, yes, one, The initiative is structurally sound, but if you look at the institution around it, it remains fragile. There are high chances that it will not see the light of the day, just like other initiatives in Nigeria. So people should begin to interrogate what are those institutional frameworks that you're putting in place to make sure that this is the light of it. Are you setting up a company, an SPV, and building ring fencing it and making sure nothing happens to it? Even the IPP, the Nigerian IPP that Obasanjo did face a lot of institution fragile issues, risk. That's the first thing. The second thing is also emergence of regional energy federalism. That's scary. Um, why it's good on paper, because yeah, you're addressing the, how will I call it now, the deficit, the energy deficit. See what you're doing as setting up a regional energy federalism, and then everybody start going in that same direction. What will be the implication of that in terms of gas, especially the regions that control gas? What will be the implication of that in terms of the dams that the federal government is? I don't know whether they are still building those dams, right? What will be the implication? And especially so those are the contentious issues that needs to be looked at, especially, and then overall, I think the success of this initiative is less of a technology problem, but more of a political problem. And then needs to be, I think there's a regulatory problem, and then we have a credibility problem. So if we can address those three building blocks, I think we can solve this. But the most important thing is that this regional energy federalism that we're seeing, the implication could actually be there, right? It will create a lot of problems. And then everybody start going in that direction. And before you know it, every other thing is not just energy. You begin to see road, you begin to see things follow that same direction. I know some people will say, "Oh, that's lovely," but that could signal that could signal that comes with its own political reason. I don't need to dive deep into those things. So those are the issues that I have with these things. My own take is simple and straightforward. I don't think the building blocks are there to make this work. I may sound pessimistic, but there's a reason why I'm pessimistic. When I was way younger, I saw a lot of initiatives like this fail. And when I thought everything would work, I thought the political means are there, everything is there, but they all failed. And I've learned why they fail. And the reason why they fail, I can actually see them all around this lovely initiative that we're seeing. How we address those elements is what will make it work. So until we see that movement in that direction, the direction of travel towards addressing those issues, I'll remain pessimistic that yeah, this will not translate to something good.
Hmm. I mean, like you said, it's left for the states to be able to address those key issues that would, um, hamper kind of the partnership. But hopefully, fingers crossed. I'll be the optimistic one here today. Fingers crossed that they're able to, make a difference and, plan for those risks. I kind of put like a risk management in place to be able to preempt risk that will be able to come up. Up to our final story, where Ivory Coast, we see Ivory Coast who are going to have their elections on Saturday, the 25th of October. Um, from, going down to the elections, we've seen um, opposition members being prevented to take part in the elections. We have seen protests, be a crackdown on protest. And now we have seen a more bold take on the protesters. So the government has, the court has sentenced 32 protesters. And this shows that the Ivorian government is serious in their approach um, in attacking people who are opposing them. That's just what it shows. But stopping protesters is one thing, preventing them from protesting is one thing, but actually sentencing protesters, what do you think is the message that it's sending to the electorate who are going to be voting on Saturday as well? Do you think that they would come out to cast their votes. Do you feel that we will still see people challenge the government? I mean, even before the elections, even during the elections. Um, do you think it's going to also have a an action on the credibility of the elections as well?
I mean, that's a big that's a big question. I
I
think I
know.
read I think I read a book one time, and I was listening to someone. He said, "How do you rig election?" I think for an authoritarian, and you can pick the lessons from all the authoritarians in the world. The first step an incumbent does is actually to use what you call legalistic repression. So use things like court ruling, ban, selective prosecution to shut people up. They typically don't start with violence, but they use those things to actually shrink the opposition spaces. And they still try to do that by preserving their international legitimacy. So the US government likes me. So they take picture, photo up, right? They take photo up with Trump. They take photo up with this one. They do all those things, right? That is the starting point. The next stage is now when they start implementing their repressive rules and roles, right? It's not rocket science. People will start complaining. When you're picking people up, people will feel bad, and then people will start protesting. And what they typically do there is actually to use their public order status, and they use policing, and then they also preemptively take actions to begin to arrest people. And as at that time, they care less about international legitimacy. Now, unfortunately, international legitimacy had been weakened because of what you begin to hear from the UK government, the US government. It's been weakened. So now they don't care, so they can jump to the second stage. The third stage is now to begin to fragment the opposition party, to separate them. So you see them begin to pay people to protest, counter protest. And then the process of counter protest, violence breaks down. They also go back to stage two, where they repress and then they stop people. Anyway, we've seen this thing. These are actually the playbook of a classical authoritarian regime, and it's not just peculiar to Africa; it's across the world. My take here is one: anytime you see this, the intention is not to make the country peace so that people can live in peace and tranquility. Absolutely not. The intention is to grab power and hold on to power. There's nothing like a credible threat environment, right, where issues are there and they are trying to enforce rules. They are actually trying to be strong. They want to de-escalate. No, that's not their intention. The intention is actually to steal power. And how do you steal power? You steal power by voting. So if you started this even before the day of the voting, what do you expect will happen on the day people are going out to vote? You begin to see things like that, right? Even become more aggressive. So my take here is that it's sad that we are still talking about people still want to rule over people that have not given them mandates. Why do you want to rule over people that have not given you mandates? So that you can live like a king, right? And so governance is not about service to the people, but rather so that it gives you and confers you with the privilege to live like a king and order people to be killed and take all those decisions. Absolutely, that's the reason why you will want to steal people's power. It's why unfortunate that what we're saying in Cote d'Ivoire, is getting to this level. We hope not. We wish that whether we like it or not, that what has happened during the pre-election period is very clear, right? The whole agenda is actually to repress voters. On the day of the election, I think the expectation is that that will continue. And if you do that, definitely there's no way that election can be free and fair. The whole concept of free and fair election is to allow every individual to actually make a choice about selecting their leader, electing their leaders. After electing their leaders, everybody goes back and then those leaders now begin to implement policies that favors everybody, not just the people that elect you. That's the whole concept of governance. That's the whole concept of democracy. And these things are not alien to Africa. We had democracy even before colonialism came into Africa. We've had all those democracy. We have all those systems of checks and balances all built into our traditional ways in which we live. It's quite unfortunate that this military Togu mentality had taken over the country, and then people want to authoritatively begin to. I mean, we saw it in Cameroon, we're seeing it in Kodo, where everybody would do it because it's the easiest way. You have to be an extremely light-hearted person, good-hearted person for you to actually not take this. I mean, for you not to take all these actions. These have been the actions that everybody takes, especially when you have opportunity of ruling over African countries. And then with that, you can rule the country till you die, because not everybody owns guns, right? And so it's quite sad what we're seeing. I wish the right people are elected. I wish the international communities themselves can see and read through what is going on. And then by doing that, they can actually begin to address some of this high-handedness that leads to this kind of why should somebody die because they want to elect a leader? Why should somebody be thrown into jail because I oppose your views? That's an African. That's not the way Africa was. That was not the way African was. The way African was is that you have a traditional ruler, you have the priest, the two of them sometimes disagree. And when they disagree, it's open. They tell you, I disagree with you. That's the whole essence of having cabinets, right? Where you have lords and chiefs that sit with you and tell you what you don't want to hear. So we have a situation whereby somebody is just taking arbitrary decision and killing people and throwing people to jail because you want to be elected. It's sad.
It really is sad. And like you rightly put, it's a playbook. It's like they just have a playbook and they do step one, they take step two, step three. We have an election, re-elect them. You want a democracy, we give you elections. That should be enough. And they go on the next election cycle. I mean, we look forward to see what the elections will be on Saturday. And I hope that, no more protesters are arrested as well. And, the country would be peaceful, especially when it comes to the elections on Saturday. Thank you very much, Samuel, for joining us on today's episode. It was really enlightening to learn from you as always.
Thank you for having me on the podcast. Thank you so much.
To all our listeners, this podcast is by SBM Intelligence. You can access our podcast by searching for SBM Intelligence anywhere you find podcasts. For deeper insights into our work, you can always visit our website at sbmintel.com. Remember to connect with us on all our social media platforms. You can find us on X, Facebook, Blue Sky, and LinkedIn at SBM Intelligent. That's all for this week. See you next week where we discuss on the issues that are shaping our African continent. Thank you.